This Riot blockchain stock analysis video is for informational purposes only and is not financial advice. And the first thing I want to point out is that Riot blockchain, the stock, has really been underperforming Bitcoin itself, obviously. You can see that the stock has just been kind of trading sideways. Is really kind of the lower part of its recent, let's call it 5-6 month range. And we're trading here at $27. And just as a quick reference, let's look at Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is sort of retesting all-time highs and is kind of hanging out here around the $60,000 level. And from a stock perspective, Riot's definitely been underperforming. If we take a quick look at Marathon, you can see that Marathon better mimics the price of Bitcoin. There's a little bit more correlation here. But just because Riot has not been matching the performance and is underperforming doesn't mean that it can't have a move back up to the top of its range. And I'm going to loosely call that $40 right now. And the bottom is probably around 25. So we're in a tricky situation though, but I think this could be the catalyst for a move higher. But I do want price to prove itself. And I want to talk a little bit about earnings. Riot has earnings coming out November 15th, so about 2 weeks from the time I'm doing this video. And I want to quickly just go through the recent earnings sort of announcements, estimates, and type of data, just real high level here for Riot in the past, let's call it a year. So if we go back to November of 2020, if we just look at the estimated revenue and then the reported revenue, we can see that they estimated 2.5 million and they came in around 2.46 million. So they're pretty close to matching what their estimates are, at least for that particular cycle. In the next one, the estimate went up to 3.6 million. So again, we went from 2.5 to 3.6. That's about a 50% increase in estimated revenue. It actually blew past that at 5.2 million. This was a really good earnings announcement. I'll also add, let me zoom in here, that a lot of these earnings announcements aren't really stock movers, which is kind of interesting. That's something we're not used to in the typical stock world, but with blockchain, anything's possible, right? So I'm not laying out the fact that we're going to get this big move, but just the fact that the estimates have been increasing, right? So here was another earnings, and the estimate went from 3.6 million to 24 million. That's like 8 times as much. And again, almost matching it, right? So yeah, it came in a little bit short. And again, not a big stock mover. However, this was a short-term bottom. If we fast forward to August, we see that they went from 24 million up to 32 million. So another, 30% increase. And again, was able to closely match the actual earnings announcement. And if we zoom in here, again, we have earnings coming up on November 15th, and they are estimating 64 million, right? So if we look at this 32, they're doubling their estimate again. So the fact that they continue to increase their estimates tell me there's something positive going on with this company. It's definitely a high risk play. I'm not in this yet, but I am looking to participate in a potential move to the upside with Riot blockchain stock. And what I'm looking for is really some confirmation that this is going higher. So just from a short-term technical analysis basis, if we have this, I'm going to call it a short-term bottom here around 25, and the top of the range is about 40. So if the moving averages are kind of coiled, and I'm just kind of looking at the 3, 5, 8, and 21. And if we zoom in here a little bit, we are getting a little bullish divergence where we had to move back above the 21 and consolidating. So this congestion zone holds and we start to move higher. I think there's an opportunity to get long Riot, and they do have options, they do have stock. I'm not going to recommend a specific play, obviously, but because this is higher risk and you are heading to an earnings event. Now, if you watch the earnings and you want to wait because you want to be a little bit more conservative, and if they do match the earnings and the move isn't too extravagant, then maybe you can hop on after earnings. I'm hoping to get in before earnings, but I really want some confirmation that this thing is moving higher, and then I would potentially look to buy a smaller position and hold through earnings with the idea that if it did kind of give up the ghost and go back to the 20s, I could then buy some more. So it's a little bit of trying to get some exposure to this underperforming stock. I don't have the chart in front of me, but there's a couple other sort of fundamental analysis tools that actually say that this stock is undervalued with about 30% of upside. So I'll just throw that in there. So I'm looking at Riot. I'm going to see what happens over the next few days into earnings. Obviously, I think the price of Bitcoin itself could determine a lot of this. So if we see Bitcoin itself stay range bound and maybe pull back to lower 50s, that could be an indication that maybe we don't want to hop on the crypto mining stocks. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with some of the technology innovation that these guys are doing, and probably others as well, is that they are developing immersion cooled Bitcoin mining, which from what I've seen and what that does is it increases the cooling rate, which is one of the biggest thing against mining itself, is keeping all those machines cool. Long story short, they're innovating in this territory, and I think their actual margins could increase if they can actually get some of those costs down. And they're saying that they anticipate increased in the hash rates as well as the cooling for the actual machines, which ultimately would reduce costs. So even though this stock is a little bit undervalued now and not outperforming, I'm taking a longer term sort of view with the idea that this thing could at least get to the top of the range. If it actually gets back up to its recent high, that would be a double or a triple here. So high risk, take it for what it's worth, and I'll see you at the next video.